Cool. All right, well, we'll get going. Tina, thanks for joining us tonight.
For having me.
Um, you're welcome. So I think a lot of people in the group, either here now or that are going to listen after, know you, have ridden with you, or something.
Yeah.
But we'll have you do a brief introduction in case those folks that haven't. So maybe like what you do for work, a little bit about kind of the style of riding you're doing, and then we'll get in more specifically to your races and adventures and things like that.
Okay.
So go ahead.
So my name is Chritine Stone. I go by Tina, but you can call me Chritine too. I live in Vernon, Connecticut. I'm 52. I work for myself, so that does kind of allow me to have a little bit of freedom in my schedule. I tend to bulk up my work schedule in the off months when riding isn't really happening much outside, so that I kind of have more free time when the weather gets nice, which I'm fortunate. But it doesn't mean that I'm not working every day. I still work every day. It's just for myself. So um, my style of riding has changed over the years. I was definitely a road rider. I got into touring about 12 years ago, and did a ton of routes. I did all like the major rail trails in the area, from the Erie to the East Coast Greenway, the C&O Gap, did the Green Mountain Loops, did the Adirondacks. So did a bunch of tours. I live right on the Hop River Trail, so I utilize that a lot for riding. And then at the start of the pandemic, because I work for myself and I need people to go away and I need people to buy things from me, I was out of work. So the bike became really something important, and I was just off exploring every day. And that's when I really fell in love with gravel. I just started exploring, where does this go? Where does that go? And that led me to fall in love with that style of riding, being off the roads, away from traffic, having an adventure, never knowing you're going to have to hike your bike. And so then I kind of got into bike packing, bought the bike that I would need to do that. And then last year I decided to start doing some bike packing racing. uh,
Cool. I
so,
love
so
these things because you think you know someone, and I had no idea like this was as new as the pandemic.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, I didn't really have a proper bike. I mean, I had my Salsa Via, which is like a touring rig, so it was okay on gravel. It wasn't the best rig to be exploring
Yeah.
starting the pandemic, but I made it work and I had a blast. I mean, my niece wasn't really in school much. School was half days, and so we would just take off every afternoon.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right, so I think what we'll do, and people can pop in with questions at any point, but I'll kind of like guide us through some stuff and then we can open up the floor. But if you got a question, I don't know, raise your hand, talk, put it in the chat, anything works. Um, so I think let's start telling us about some of like your bigger races and adventures, and then we'll circle back and kind of get into like what do you need to buy? What do you need to do? And kind of like what you're doing for us this year. But you do some like wicked cool rides. So I don't know if you want to start with your favorite one or some of like the bigger ones,
The
whatever.
races are like the rides themselves.
Let's start with races because I
Okay.
think those are some of like maybe
So
things people have heard.
So when I fell in love with gravel riding and the thought of exploring all these different things, I've always wanted to ride the Great Divide. That's been a dream. Um, and so during the pandemic, that kind of became more of a dream. And coming out of the pandemic, the first thing I was going to need to do was buy a bike that could handle the divide. And so um, 2 years ago, I picked up a Salsa Fargo. And then last year, I decided that if I'm going to do the Great Divide, then I better start doing some events to see what this is all about. So my first event was last May, which was the Trans Virginia 550. And I kind of totally went into that as a newbie, totally underestimated the difficulty of bike packing racing. Um, Definitely was not prepared mentally enough. I did not have enough low end gearing on the bike. And I totally messed up nutrition. It was a total failure. The first 2 days of the event, the heat index was over 100, which I am not a hot weather rider. Um, and so I got through the first 2 days were over 100. The third day, it poured rain for 10 hours and it got cold. And I'm stuck out in the middle of nowhere. And I lost the brakes on the bike and I had to pitch my tent in the middle of the friggin' woods in the pouring rain in the middle of the night. So the morning of day 4, I rolled into a town and got myself a hotel and I scratched. I couldn't even sleep because I was so exhausted that every time I lay down to sleep, my body was shaking, literally quivering. But I had not drinking enough. I had not eaten enough. I lost my appetite on that ride. So I wasn't eating. So it was no longer fun.
So for people that don't know, Trans Virginia, you start in DC, right? And then you
Then
ride
you
to
go
Damascus.
Damascus, yeah,
Yeah.
Virginia. It's 550 miles over crazy terrain. Um, I think nowadays a lot of people mix bike packing and touring as one. And I think touring now is called bike packing as well because we have backpackers. And so it's kind of gotten lumped in this, but bike packing is totally different from touring. Bike packing involves crazy terrain. I mean, everything from mountain bike trails to gravel roads to hike a bikes it's totally unrideable, river crossings, stream crossings. The events you are totally self-supported. And these events there's no entry fees, there's no prize money. It's just bragging rights. There's some of the events have a small fee. You do have to, if you don't have a tracking device, pay for a tracker. Because we're all tracked by GPSs. You cannot help a fellow rider. You can't draft. And you're responsible for all your food, all your water, and all your gear. Bike breaks. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, you need to kind of know how to fix things. You can use third-party establishments. So you can use hotels, restaurants, bike shops. You can beg for a ride to get to, a bike shop for a fix, but you got to be brought back to where you got taken off the course, and from that point, otherwise you're disqualified. So
Yeah, so a couple of questions with that. I know a little bit about this because of my brother, but first question is going to be what do you do for safety? What do you have, like an inReach or something like that? So start with that.
Yeah, so far I've rented a spot tracker from the event organizer. So I actually rent it from track leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So all the riders that are actually, competing and being followed, not every rider has to use one. I mean, you don't have to, be timed or anything. I do it so that my mom can see where I am and that she's comfortable knowing that I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these events, you don't have cell service for most of the day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I think some of you guys, we call it
us.
like dot watching, like you
Yeah,
guys
so you
dot
can
watch
follow us on the
Tina.
track leaders
Yeah.
website and actually, yeah, dot stock.
Yep. Yeah. And then I know so for people that don't know, like a Garmin inReach, it's like a device you can use when you don't have cell service and you can send kind of like short texts and it gives you, I think, like coordinates on like where you are and where you send those texts. So
There's
it
an
sounds
SOS
really
button.
scary. Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's still
there's an SOS
scary.
button where emergency would come and get
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That costs you a lot of money. Don't press it unless you need it, but
Yeah. But there are things out there. So then my next question was something, since we're talking about Trans Virginia, let's just stick on that for a minute. Talk about some of the logistics that go into, let's just talk about like planning your route and your stops and what you're gonna do. How did that process look for you?
So, I was kind of going into this blind because I had never done this before. I've done a lot of touring, but touring is totally different from this. You're more relaxed. You kind of have your days kind of planned where you're going to end. You're making sure, you got food and all that stuff. So you are given the route beforehand. So, I usually break apart the routes, kind of see where are places that I can stay, where are my resupply points to get beverages and food. But I totally overestimated how much I was going to be able to do in a day. And so that kind of went out the window after day one. Day one, I hit my end point, but I did way too much day one, and then I didn't sleep that night because I was so over and it was so hot that day. And I did get myself a hotel room the first night just because it was so hot that day. But I couldn't eat. I just had lost my appetite.
So from that race, what have you learned about nutrition?
Um,
And that weather, like that is so hard to deal with those
yeah,
swings. Like, give you a lot of credit.
I think coming out of that race, I really learned that um, to kind of underestimate what I'm going to do in a day. I'm finding that if I I mean, you don't sleep well the night before these events because you're so amped anyways. And then you kind of get swept up in the momentum of everybody, like, we gotta, roll out like at 100 miles an hour and do as many miles as we can the first day. And I'm finding that does not work for me. And so like my second event was the Vermont Super 8 last year, which I did the North Lobe. And so the first day I planned to stay within myself. I rode my own ride and I only did 70 miles the first day. I pulled up into camp at 6:30 that night and I stayed there, even though I could have gone further, and I stayed there. And I got a good night's sleep. And then the rest of my ride, I was able to crank out over 100-mile days. Like I just felt really good going forward. And that got even better with my last event this February for the hurricane. I stayed within myself that first day. And I had my destination was 105. That's where I wanted to camp, but I rolled up on the ghost trail at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, knowing I had 2 hours to conquer the ghost trail. So there was a bypass for the ghost trail. You didn't have to do the ghost trail. But you get a 3-hour time bonus if you did it. So I decided to go for it. So of course, by the time I got out of the woods, it was getting dark. There's no way. And I was only 70 miles in. We had no resupply point until 70 miles 72 that day. And so I just camped. But because of that, I caught so many people by the end of day 2 and day 3. The people that went out too fast
Yeah.
and did too much the first day, I caught by the end.
I know, I think that's a great lesson. And I think anyone that's done like any kind of racing has probably learned that lesson, even, like a 5K, right? You go out too hard and then you're like
Yeah.
toasted by the end.
I mean,
Um,
these are a lot of miles, and you're
yeah,
on your bike 16 to 18 hours a day,
yeah,
riding. And so, if you're going to go out hauling butt, you're not going to survive. And you see that. You see that out of a lot of people by the end of day 2, day 3. And now I'm just whipping by them and they look like they're going to die.
yeah, yeah. So we did Trans Virginia. You learned a lot. And
Yes.
then you took that into
Nutrition
Vermont
was a
Super
big
8.
one. Nutrition was a big one from
Yeah.
Trans Virginia. I have discovered that I can't drink electrolyte drinks. All it does is cause stomach bloat and gas, and I can't eat. So I can't do that on these rides. And I found like sugary foods do not work for me at all. They just make me bonk. They're good for about 5 minutes and I bonk. I need real food. So I learned that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
do I eat sugary foods? Yes, but I save them towards the end of the day, and I always have a Mountain Dew on me. That is like the kicker when I need a kick in the butt. I always have that Mountain Dew on the bike, but that's my sugar, my caffeine. But otherwise, I eat, I drink a lot of chocolate milk, bananas. I love sandwiches. Egg sandwiches are the best with cheese and bacon and whatever, sausage, pickles, potato chips, like real food.
Yeah.
Just works.
Yeah. So
I'm
Vermont
super
Super
protein,
8.
a lot of jerky. Just the
Yeah.
higher protein works better for me, and everybody's different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
You
I
know,
don't, the thought of drinking
if I
chocolate
eat
milk.
sugar in the morning, my legs don't want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just dead all day.
Yeah.
Um,
So then Vermont Super 8, want to tell everyone a bit like what that is and what you did with that and kind of like your goals with that, because I know they've progressed.
so the Vermont Super 8 runs every September. There's two lobes. There's the North Lobe and the South Lobe, and they connect to make a figure 8. So riders can do the full course of both lobes, or you can just ride the North Lobe, or you can just ride the South Lobe. I decided not to go for the full 8 last year just because I wanted to see if I could at least accomplish an event. So I chose the North Lobe and I had a blast. It was so beautiful. My nutrition was spot on. I had worked on that the whole summer. Um, and I never bonked, and I had energy to the end. And came home and I went riding the next day. So like I was not exhausted. I probably could have ridden harder, but but I
How
had
many
fun.
miles?
Huh?
How many miles is
The
that one?
North Lobe is, I want to say it's just under 300, like 280, I think. A lot of climb, but yeah, that's to be expected out of Vermont.
Yeah. Yeah.
But beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. And
Vermont's
how
my,
long did that take you?
I think I accomplished that. It was 3 days, 3 days. I think it was 3 days, 8 hours. I think it's like the same as I did. Yeah, I think it was 280 miles. It took me 3 days, 8 hours. The day before the end, I actually came across another rider that was struggling. It was their first event. Um, and so we kind of rode together the next day. Kind of slowed me down a little bit, but it was fine. It was, that camaraderie of helping another rider to learn the experience, and that you need to eat more.
Yeah.
You can't follow your diet right now. Keto goes out the window right now.
No kidding. No
You know.
kidding. Yeah. And then what are you want to do Vermont Super 8 again this year, right?
I've been planning. I'm going to do the full course this year. Yeah. So yeah, I have an event. I have the BT 700 I'm doing in June, which is up in Ontario, Canada.
Cool. Okay. And then your last race, the
The Hurricane.
Hurricane. I know you want to say hurricane, but that's not
Yeah,
right.
it's the Hurricane 300. So it was 364 miles, I believe, this year. Uh, People that think Florida is all white sand beach and rail trails. Oh my God, Florida is amazing for gravel. Um, the Hurricane had over 100 miles of single track, 160 something miles of gravel, and then the rest was like paved rail trail and road. But their mountain bike parks are amazing. Their mountain bike parks are huge, that have 40, 50, 60 miles of continuous flowy trails. We rode 60 miles through the green swamp, which was cool. That was all gravel. We did the 30 miles around Lake Apopka, which is just like a raised bike path, alligators everywhere. um, yeah, that it was awesome. It was just something. The sand was tough. I did probably crash about 10 times. um, the last day, I rolled out at 4 o'clock in the morning and did the last. I had one more section of single track. It was 25 miles of single track. I did that in the dark, and that was fun. Um, um, but yeah, Florida's pretty amazing. I miss next year. I'm going back to Florida, but I miss all the Grand Departs. But I'm definitely going to go do a ride. It was amazing. We had a river crossing where we had to put our bikes up over our heads, and the water was up to our chest to get across. um, so it was neat. It was totally different.
Yeah, I would have never guessed Florida had like cool stuff.
There was times that I had to like remind myself that I was in Florida and that it was February,
Yeah.
because it was just interesting. It just, you didn't feel like you were in Florida at times.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So with those races, or I guess just riding in general, what would you say is like the scariest moment you've had?
Um, I would think I was probably the most scared doing the Trans Virginia. Um, because I had never done that type of riding like that before. And I got the first day was fine. The second night, I was trying to get through one of the knobs. And the riding became pretty technical and it got dark. And you just like all you can think about is bears. Like I had never done this. Like I'd never been out like that in the dark alone. And then I came upon where I had to go down this trail, and I totally underestimated how much light I needed. I sent one of my lights home the day before. And I really needed a second light. And I'm on this like overgrown double track that's got sticks and everything across it. And so I'm walking. I finally came out of the woods, and I just pitched my tent on the side of the road because it was just like I was exhausted. Um, but it was scary out there in the middle of the night in the dark, you know,
Yeah. And by yourself.
and by myself. Like that's
Yeah.
just something. I mean, you psych yourself out.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Every little noise, every little, twig snap. I didn't have enough lighting to light enough ahead of me. Like I'm just like, I hope nothing's behind me because I'm not turning around to look.
Yeah. That's
um,
crazy. Is the alligator the craziest animal you've seen?
I've seen a lot of bear,
A lot of bears.
a lot of bears. The alligators were fine. I wasn't scared of the alligators on this trip. As long as you leave them alone. I think I was
Yeah.
more worried about snakes than anything.
Yeah.
Um, but I did have a mama and two cubs run out in front of me one day, like right out in front of me. And of course, mom went one way, the cubs went the other. So I just stopped dead in my tracks. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for mama to run to the cubs, which she did, which was fine. But it was just like, holy crap! Like
Yeah.
I think, I get to see a fox squirrel in Florida too. I've never seen one of those. Those are kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. You don't want to get between a mom and her
no,
cubs.
it was the last morning that I did all that single track, there was so much deer out there. It was like
Hmm.
crazy. It's like my headlights like lighting up all these eyes. I'm like,
Yeah. Which is so creepy. Like I can only imagine you're in the middle of the woods by yourself because just like running in the dark in a neighborhood and you
yeah.
see like the green eyes, you're like, oh. So I can only imagine how much worse that gets.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really about just calming your mind to realize that you're fine. You're fine,
Yeah, yeah.
What's the worst that's gonna happen? I mean,
Right, right. I know you got to talk
about
yourself
it. Just
down.
keep going.
Yeah. One of the trips Spencer and I did, we were in Vermont and we were staying at this like on someone's farm. Like we had found it through this website and I don't know, you pay the guy $20 or something. But in the middle of the night, like we heard like the loudest pitch screaming from some animal and it just like wakes you from a dead of sleep. And like, like consciously, it's not that close, but it feels so
Right.
close. You're like, these animals, whatever they are on top of my tent right now. And it's like, oh, it's
Definitely don't
crazy.
sleep well when I'm out there by myself. When I pitch my tent, I definitely don't sleep well. It's just more that I just need to get off the bike for a few hours and like relax my back and let my legs kind of, relax. But you don't really sleep well on any of these events.
Yeah.
Uh, because the clock is continuously moving. It's a 24-hour clock. It's constantly moving. So when you're off the bike, the clock is still going. Um, so even though I'm not racing for a fastest known time, I'm still trying to do the best I can. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, before we like dive in a bit to your setup, does anyone have any questions so far about the races? Anya's riding. I love it. I give you credit. All right, so tell us a little bit. I know like we're probably not going to get into all the nitty-gritty details about your bike setup, but kind of like what does it look like? And you obviously had to like learn about that whole process. So kind of walk us through that.
yeah. So, some people ride for the bike packing stuff, run a gravel bike. But I'm running a Salsa Fargo, which is basically
Hold on, I think you froze. Can anyone else hear her?
Yeah, she's frozen.
Okay, hold on, Tina.
Frozen.
So,
Not hearing her.
There we go.
Oh,
Okay. Okay. I think we're good. Start over. Salsa Fargo. That's all I got.
I don't know what you guys heard.
Salsa Fargo. That's all I
Yeah,
heard.
so I am running a Salsa Fargo after a lot of debate of what I wanted to get, which is basically a rigid drop bar mountain bike. So it has a setup of like a mountain bike, but there's no suspension on it. It can handle up to a 3-inch wide tire if I would like, if I want to, if I choose to do that. And it does have the capability that I could put a 100 millimeter travel suspension fork on the front if I chose to do that too. So that's kind of nice about that bike, and that's why I chose that bike. Um, it's not the fastest bike out there. You know, it's a steel frame, but I call her name is Lucy the Dragon Slayer because she slays any terrain. But she actually rides better with load than without load. Very stable. I love that bike. If you know, I didn't love it at first when I first got it, but now I love that bike. And if I could only keep one bike, that would be the bike.
Yeah, and just so people know too, I think like in road riding and stuff, we don't often talk about steel frame bikes, and that seems like so out of date. But I think in this kind of like adventure style riding, steel frames are a lot more common, and a lot of people like choose that. Like if they could pick any bike, they're choosing a steel frame bike. So is that like kind of your
The steel
experience,
frame
Chritine?
actually
Yeah.
will eat up a lot of the chatter of rough terrain. It also has the capability of handling a heavier load, and it's far more durable if you crash it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, so
uh,
my brother said like if he was to buy another bike, it would be steel frame. He
yeah,
said the carbon bike is just like not it for these multiple day things. So,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is like I think a misconception when you come from the road, right? It's all like lighter,
Right,
faster,
right.
blah 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 blah, and like
You know, you have to
yes,
think
like
about, you know, like I'm sitting on my bike 16 to 18 hours a day. I need something comfortable. So this bike is a little bit more upright. So I'm not leaning forward. So I'm taking that stress off of my neck, my shoulders, my wrists. So you're a little bit sitting more upright. You know, I have put a suspension stem on the front, the Redshift suspension stem that just eats up all that small little chatter for me. So I'm not getting all that little chatter all the time through my hands. Um, yeah, I mean, some people go and they put a suspension seat post on. I have not found that I need that yet. I'm not at that point yet. um, but I love that bike. So,
yeah. All right, so what do you have on there for bags?
so I am running actually bike packing bags. I have the ability to do that. Some people still run panniers. It depends. The smaller frames can't handle the big seat packs in the back. So I do have an Ortlieb 15-liter seat pack in the rear that comes off my saddle. Um, I'm running a frame bag, not a full frame bag. I do have the ability to put one water bottle behind it. And I do have, I'm running the Apidura long top tube bag. So it covers the whole top. I was in between frame sizes. I'm 5'6", but I have a 32-inch inseam, so technically I should be on a medium, but the reach was going to be too long. So I went for the small, so I had plenty of space above the frame. So I went with that long, the same for my seat bag. It actually gave me more clearance. I did have to put in a longer seat post, but no big deal. And then up front, I am running the Ortlieb system that has the bag with the rack off the front. So it's off away from my cables and off of my handlebars. So I still have full handlebar space for all my gadgets.
I was muted. I was gonna say you don't realize how quickly like your handlebars get crowded until you try to do a
I mean,
trip.
between, yeah,
Yeah.
lights and you're running your GPS. And I did want to do for the Hurricane, I did get myself a set of aero bars just to have a change in position. And of course, you know, I brought everything with me to Florida, but I left the bars home. Brought the pads and all the gear and everything, but left the bars at home. So I have not had a chance to try those yet.
Yeah.
Um, but I have had, so for the Trans Virginia, I lost feeling in my first two toes, my big toe, the toe next to it, and I lost feeling for probably about 3 weeks. I did change up my shoes to a wider toe box shoe, and I went a size larger in my shoes because on multi-day events your feet are going to swell, so you need
Yeah.
room. And then the Vermont Super 8, I had no numbness. The Hurricane, I lost feeling in my right hand pinky, and it still has days where it's a little funky, but it's almost back. But that's now almost 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Uh, but
For
that's just sitting
shoes,
on the bike in the same position.
Yeah. For shoes, are you in like a less stiff soled shoe as well?
I'm running the Pearl Izumi X Alp Summits. I love them because they can hike. They got good grip. Why? I mean, I have wide feet, so wide toe box. I don't know. I love those shoes.
Yeah. No, that's a good point because yeah, that's like another thing that you don't think about in these things is like the hike a bike
There
and
is a lot of hike a bike.
yeah, and like how like my like little example is when I did the Nat Chalk Epic the other weekend and had all these flats. If you didn't see my post, I like walked back to an aid station just on the airline trail, and I have like kind of like racing, like really stiff mountain bike shoes, and like it was just not it. Like I like walked to the aid station that was no longer there, and I was like, I'm waiting for a ride because I can't walk anymore. Like I don't want to hurt myself. So like that
Yeah.
becomes so important when you're like actually doing a race where you know you're going to have to walk.
Your feet
Um,
need to be comfortable. I mean, there's a lot of miles of walking, and I sometimes think the walking is harder than the riding.
yeah.
Because you don't realize, like when you're riding, like you feel the fatigue in your quads, but you don't realize how tired your calves and your butt muscles and your low back is until you have to push a 55, 60-pound rig up a hill, a
Yeah, yeah,
rock
yeah.
hill, you know.
Yeah. Now with your setup, do you practice riding that? Because I know like the bike can feel different with and without weight.
Yes, I start usually several weeks out from an event, putting more load onto the bike, and doing some rides. But otherwise outside of that, no, I'm just out being crazy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that makes sense though, like before the event though,
I
just to get
actually
the
like the bike better loaded on
yeah,
technical stuff. It just seems to be more grounded and tends to run a little bit smoother. I don't know what it is about that bike, but that bike is built to handle load. And so it just tends to handle the rougher stuff better with load on it, which is
yeah,
really weird.
yeah,
But
it's interesting. And then so going back to your bags, what do you have in each bag? Like, I mean, you don't need to tell us every specific thing, but give
so
us an
in
idea of what you need to bring.
this has been a lot of trial and error too. And for the Trans Virginia, I totally messed this up and I fought with my seat pack the entire ride. I think that was a lot of the frustration is I was having to stop every half hour and readjust the seat pack. So now in my seat pack, I have my tent, my sleeping mat, um, let's see, my tent, my sleeping mat. I usually carry a towel with me. Usually have like my wet wipes and stuff in there. And usually like my toiletries are all stuffed in there. So it's a stiffer bag because the tent provides that stiffness on the bottom. So what happens over time over the rough terrain, the bag starts to bend and things get shifted. So I found that works better and I don't have to deal with it. And so I never go in that bag during the day because every time I go in that bag, you mess something up and then it's rubbing the tire. Um, Out front, I carry all my clothes. Um, so I usually bring an extra kit, and then I have something to sleep in. And the stuff that I sleep in is also if you were in town. So you're trying to carry as little as possible. I always bring a puffy coat. Um, and then it just depends on the time of year. And then I have the ability to carry double cages on my front fork. I got 6 eyelets on my front forks on each side. So I have the everything cages on each side. So one bag, one rack has my sleeping bag on it, and my other rack has all my rain gear. So I have easy access to all my rain gear when I need it. And then I run 2 extra water bottles in the mounts behind it. And then up top, I am running 2 feed bags, which have 2 water bottles in them. And then my long top tube bag has my battery packs and then my snacks that I can easily get to, for the next several hours. And then my frame bag carries most of my toolkits and just miscellaneous stuff. If I remove it during the day, sometimes I'll just shove it, or food. It carries a lot of food in there. My frame bag is my food. So sandwiches and extra food along with my tubes and stuff like that. And then down underneath on the down tube, I have a big screw top bottle that carries all my essential repair kit. Also in my frame bag is a first aid kit.
Mm.
There's
I
a
know I
lot.
always, yeah, we always feel like we need everything for the bike and to fix the bike, but like we forget about ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. On top of sunscreen and bug spray and
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
the
awesome.
bikes are heavy. I mean, once it's fully loaded with, if I'm fully loaded with food and water, I'm probably tipping the scales over 60 pounds. So,
Yeah, it's amazing. It adds up.
well, yeah. And that's why I think, I think females are totally killer when it comes to that stuff because we're pushing basically half our body weight compared
Yeah,
to
that's a good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. All right. Any questions so far? Okay, so the next thing I want to get into a little bit is um you're leading a couple of bike packing trips for us this year. So like if people are interested in those or like in general like bike packing for the first time, kind of like what should they expect? How should they go about getting the things they need? Just kind of any
um,
tips and tricks.
So, I mean, you don't need really a lot. And there was, definitely a couple members last year that joined that had nothing. I do have some extra supplies of stuff that I can help people out with. Um, I think that the two trips, I mean, the two ones that I'm running right off the bat this year, you don't need anything more than a set of panniers. Um, so a rack and a couple pannier bags, you'll be fine for those events. Obviously you need a tent, you need, I'd get a sleeping pad and a good sleeping bag, but um, you know, not really much else. I mean, as a group, you can kind of share supplies too. So not everybody needs to bring sunscreen, not everybody needs to bring bug spray. We did last year with their for the first trip where a couple of us only brought stoves. Not everybody had to bring a stove. We can boil water and everybody can use it. So
Yeah, and I think I don't want people to think they can't do something because they don't have the stuff. Like obviously you need a bike, but I
I mean,
think
you have
outside,
some dry bags and you
yeah,
have um, some straps. You can strap stuff to your bike
yeah.
easily.
And I think like just don't be afraid to ask like Tina, me, or put a message in the group because between us and like I know some people, right? Like we can probably get you. So like don't let like if you've got the bike and you want to go, like we can probably finagle the rest and help you
Yeah,
out. So
yeah.
don't let that stop you because I think everyone these trips are just so cool, right?
Especially,
Like just to
especially to
experience
try it
it.
out and see if you like it.
Yeah.
Now so people that went last year and they want to go again this year, I am going to push them to buy their own stuff. Like if you like this, then it's time to, you spend a couple $100, you can pick up if you already have all the rest of the gear, if you spend a couple $100 on bags, you could definitely, then you have your own stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
there's a lot of companies out there coming out with some neat stuff. Like people that have mountain bikes. I mean, the Aero Spider Rack, what an amazing system. It can go on any bike, any bike. And great for full suspension mountain bikes if that's what you want to run. Um, so there's a lot of great companies out there coming out with stuff that's totally unique. So if you don't have eyelets for racks or you don't have the clearance for a seat bag, there's other stuff out there. There's other options.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and again, I'm looking up this rack now, that's really cool.
Yeah, AEROE.
Yeah. Um, and again, like if this is something like you're thinking about doing, whether it's like this year or next year, like just plan far and ahead, right? Like even if you're thinking now, hey, I want to
Well, yeah,
start
I
like
only have
saving
so
and
many
getting
supplies
organized.
too. So first come, first serve. So
Yeah. But just start like, preparing for like, hey, what I may need, what I'm willing to spend on this, and kind of preparing it out. Cause the logistics is a lot of this. Like, I think we're lucky and Tina covers a lot of that with like the routes and the stops and the camping and things like that. But when you're like venturing on your own or like with a friend that's not Tina organizing it,
I am a
it
mapping
does take,
nerd.
yeah, it takes like a lot of preparation. So
I love to map and I love to explore. So I don't know. I love that part of it.
yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
was out exploring in the mesh today. Just, let's see what's out here. Yeah, I totally
Yeah.
have some hiking today.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not where I'm taking the ladies on a Wednesday night gravel ride. We're going to do some of this route, but we're not doing this part.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, so we've got two events scheduled already. They're already on Facebook. So check those out if you're interested. And obviously, like, just shoot Tina a message if you have more questions about the route or something. So take a look at those. All right, what questions does the group have? We've got some time left. I know there's probably some questions.
Hi, Tina. Hi, Hunter. It's Kim.
Hi.
I met I met Tina last night for the first time. You're an amazing rider. I've been following you and enjoying your travels and adventures. My question is, how do you learn about these events? Where do you find them online? The equipment you're talking about. When I look online for even just a neat cage for one of my bikes, I'm like, all I'm seeing is the stuff at Amazon. So how are you finding these events and this equipment? And
A great
what do you
resources
spend
is
on the equipment to outfit your bike?
yeah, a great resource is bikepacking.com.
Okay.
If you go to their website, they have all kinds of videos, they have all kinds of gear. I think on Facebook, join some bikepacking groups. You don't
Okay.
have to ever comment it in, but you get a lot of information of stuff that people are showing and what they're running. I would also check out YouTube videos. Go and look up bikepacking routes. There's like Ryan Van Duzer is great, to learn about bikepacking. I mean, he's got such a great attitude. But there's a ton of people out there, like watch some of the, what these people are doing. I think, yeah, Amazon, we all get kind of stuck into Amazon, but there's so much more out there that's available these days to use. Uh,
Okay. Good start.
so I
Thanks.
think, looking at some of those sites, bikepacking.com also has all these events pretty much listed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I put a couple links in the chat to make it a little easier.
So I have a question.
How
How you doing? So like how do you know which wheels to get or which tires? Because it seems like, well, it seems like it's a balance. I mean, I understand about the width, but as far as how knobby or how slick, because if they're too knobby, then you don't get any speed at all. And
it's going to depend on the terrain that you're doing.
right,
I've for what I do, I have fallen in love with the Renee Hurst tires. I just, they are durable. I'm still running tubes. I'm not even running tubeless yet. I'm still scared of going tubeless because I
right,
do change up my tires a lot. I really don't want to deal with that mess. But I have yet to have a single flat on them. But by running those, and what I did for the Hurricane, knowing that there was miles of sand, is I went wider. So I was running 48 millimeters. So I went to the 55 millimeters, which are 2.2s, but it was totally the wrong tire for sand. So the
wow,
Renee Hurst are they're bevel tires, where I needed more of a square tire that had more bite on the edges for the sand. But for New
right,
England, I mean, I'm loving the Renee Hurst, but I think tires are personal. I really do. I think it's
okay,
finding what you like and what you feel comfortable with. My bike came with the Terraville Sparwoods, which everybody loves. I hated them. Right
right,
from the
that's
get-go. I just felt like I was constantly spinning my back wheel. I had no grip, but people
wow,
love it, but I didn't like them. I have a
wow.
brand new pair. Anybody want a pair of Sparwoods? So I think it's just trial and error.
Right,
Um, I think for New England, if you're going to really get into gravel, if you're going to get into some bike packing, you definitely need somewhat of a knob. We're very rocky.
right,
So you need something that's going to, if it slides, it's going to find grip and it's going to stick. I mean, because you're going to get jostled around here in New England. I mean, you're going to slide, and that's learning to slide with your bike and know that tire is going to catch. Uh,
right.
so I think running a knob,
Uh-huh.
um, and the wider you go on a tire that your bike can take, the more cush you got and the more ability you have to get up and over stuff. Is it a little bit of a slower rolling tire? Yes, but are you going for speed? Are you going for comfort? I think that's where you have to choose and draw the line of what you want.
Right. So would you ever consider like a fat bike?
Um, I don't think right now I'd run a fat bike. No, I wouldn't run a fat bike in an event. Although if you got a fat bike, I mean, you could put thinner tires on. A fat bike actually has a very nice, most of them are pretty much nicely set up like a backpacking rig. And a lot of people do run their fat bikes.
Right,
So that's all personal too. But you don't have to ride a 4-inch wide tire on them. You can put a thinner tire on them.
Right.
And I would think most of the events, people are running a 2.2 to a 2.6 wide tire on the bikepacking events. And that's just because, riding your bike that many hours a day. I mean, yeah, the racers are running skinnies, but they're getting beat up,
Right.
but they're doing it as fast as they can. Where, I'm out there for how many days? I want to be comfortable,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to race. I'm not looking to set an FKT. I'm a little bit beyond that. To me, it's about pushing my limits and can I finish? That's what
Right.
it comes down to. I mean, these events are more of a mental game than they are a physical game.
Right.
I mean, you can easily talk yourself out. I mean, there's a lot of swearing that goes on at times.
We were
A lot of
talking.
this sucks, and but in 5 minutes down the course, I could be having the ride of my life. So those are the things. Can you deal with that in a day? Because you're going to have those ups and downs all the time. I mean, for the hurricane, the end of day 2, all of day 3, which I've never had. Technically, it was day 2 with the hours, but I'll call it day 3. I was in flow state all of day 3. I passed so many riders that day. I was just, and I think that's why my finger went numb. I felt nothing. I was just dialed in, and I was going.
Right.
For me, the 60 miles through the green swamp was a blast. I was just on fire. It was like the whole day. And of course, then I went to sleep and I got up the next day and I'm like, oh, my legs don't want to go, but an hour into the ride, I was fine. But I've never had a full day. Like, I just felt like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Yeah. That sounds
But,
nice.
everything was just going. I was putting something in my mouth every hour. And it was just like, I felt awesome that day.
That's excellent.
I guess those are the things that you're always chasing, is that flow state of like, where it's just like the miles fly by and it's like, this is amazing. And that was the day that I had to keep reminding myself that I was in Florida in February because I was just in the zone.
Right.
Yeah. I love that question, Donna. Tires are hard.
Yeah, they are.
I've thought about this year working with Trek, like probably in the fall, just to do like a general talk about like tires and like what do all the different ones mean. But like per event, it's so hard too. Like I just had this conversation with someone about Natchog Epic and what tires should I get, and like just kind of like overhauling my whole tire
And
situation.
the conditions too. Is it wet? Is
Yeah.
it dry? Is it, is it going to rain? I mean,
But the thing is that the conditions change all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
it's
think
like
too,
if
like if
Renee-
you find an event, like, if Tina's done it, great. Or if you join one of those groups and if like, you're like, hey, I'm doing this, like, what are your suggestions? Like, see what other people have to say. Because the whole idea about New England is so true. Like our type of riding is so different than other parts of the country.
Mhm.
And again, like if you haven't experienced that, like you don't know. That's why it's just like, if you have like any groups, just ask.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we have so much rock up here that you
Yeah.
need something that's going to bite and catch when you slide. I mean,
Right.
I think if you got a squared off tire, you're going to be catching too much edge on different things, and that's going to throw you down.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, everything's personal.
Right.
Yeah, I like the Renee Hurst because they roll fast on pavement, because the way their knobs are set up, they're quiet. They roll fast on pavement. They shed mud great. They were not good for sand, but I don't usually run into sand that much up here.
Right.
So, that was okay. Yes, I should have run a different tire at the Hurricane, but whatever. I got through. Yeah, I dumped my bike probably 10 times, but I fell in the sand. So
it was only so bad.
I wasn't hurt. Just my ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
No, that's a great question. I have a pair of Renee Hurst slicks for my like cross/gravel bike, and I love them. And I've done some like pretty gnarly stuff on them, and they've held up. Like they're a good tire for
Yeah,
sure.
I love the knobs. I don't know. I just find they don't slide out on me when I'm climbing. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. What other questions do we have? Anyone? Is there anything else you want to add, Tina, that maybe we didn't?
Yeah, I do have another one.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So like how much water are you bringing? And also you don't bring anything on your back, right?
I I have not run a Camelback yet. I probably should have for the Hurricane, only because that's one of the things I would have probably changed for that event. And not because I needed more water, but because being on 30 to 40 miles of single track at one go, you can't drink. It's hard to grab your bottle and drink when you're on that kind of trail.
Yeah.
So you basically would have to stop to really get a good amount of water in. So that was the only thing I might have done different, because a Camelback, I could have just stuck the hose in my mouth and drank while I was, negotiating all the single track.
Right.
I don't like a Camelback. I mean, there may be some events down the road that I have to. So if you put a lot of weight on your back, you're also putting that pressure on your sit bones.
Right.
You have to think of that. So if you already have saddle issues, or say after 30, 40 miles saddle issues, the Camelback's only going to exacerbate everything. Because now not only are you holding your core to sit properly on the seat, but now you're supporting this weight on your back, which is
Right.
putting pressure on your sit bones. So if you can carry your water on your frame, so now they do make water bladders that fit in frame bags that are they're made triangle to fit in the frame bags. I mean, some people just strap them to the top of their front bags too, with with volet straps, and have the hose running too. So I mean, I think getting the weight off your back is more ideal.
Mhm.
I mean, I think having a bag, maybe carrying, I mean, they do make collapsible backpacks now, where if you had to carry extra food or water or something, you could wear that. But
Right.
it doesn't really put that much more weight on the bike. But I don't know. That's just my preference. Everybody's different. Some people, that's all they drink from is the bladder. So they
So how much do you bring on your bike? How much water do you bring?
I have two 32-ounce bottles up on my front forks, and I have two 24-ounce bottles in my feed bags. And then I have my Mountain Dew.
Right. I've
Right.
seen
But
that.
I can pack stuff into my bags. I still have space in my bag, so I usually am carrying 1 or 2 chocolate milk, and I can also carry more liquids in my bag too, if I had to push it in, or I can put it in my back pocket.
Right.
Well,
Cool.
and probably a lot of that depends on like how far apart your resupplies too.
Yeah.
Right.
Some of the, like the Vermont Super 8, no, there's a plenty of resupply. There was one day I had a 90-mile stretch, but it was rideable in one day and it wasn't hot. But yeah, some of the events, well, you bring a filter, you can filter water. So I've done that.
Uh-huh. Cool.
So as long as there's water running and water spots, which are usually on the maps, there's usually POIs for that, for
Right.
spots that you can filter water.
Now, about the food, you were talking about, sandwiches and things that you get at convenience stores. But if there's a big stretch where you don't have access, then how much do you bring with you?
As much as I can fit in my bags.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're eating a lot as you're going.
Yeah, it depends on the day. I found the Hurricane, that last 24 hours, I think every hour I was putting food in my mouth, and 5 miles out from I was telling you guys this last night.
Right.
So the last 15 miles back to the finish was all single track. And it became pretty technical 5 miles out, where on a fully fully loaded bike, there's no way I'm riding that. So, I'm having to get off the bike, get back on the bike, get off the bike. And I think that's the hardest part of these events, is that you're dismounting on and off your bike probably 50 to 100 times a day. So you got to be able to swing your leg up and over your bags and back over your bike,
Right.
on top of hiking and biking, so that's another thing. I mean, you're using muscles you never know that you knew that you had. But 5 miles out, I bonked. I
Right.
had no more food left, but I always carry a sleeve of the shot blocks, the orange shot blocks that have the caffeine in them, and they're
Right.
hidden in my bag.
Right.
I dismounted my bike twice, and both times I fell because my legs were just done. I had nothing left. So I downed that sleeve, which helped me get to the end. 4 miles out, I got a wicked bad bloody nose, just stuffed a bunch of tissues up my nose and continued.
Do what you got to do.
Yeah, I was almost there.
Yeah.
It just, I think every ride's different. I think because I rode so hard that third day, just because I was in the zone, I just burned a lot more calories than I figured. But I'm glad that I was hungry, because I've had times where I'm not hungry.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I won't be doing any of these any of these rides, but certainly no races. But I was just wondering, small local
I'll
rides or
still come out
something.
for some adventures.
What's that?
I'm still hoping you'll come out for some of the adventures.
I will.
Oh, Monica, you're asking where the bike trips are
Yeah.
posted. So they're under events. I can go in and make sure that you're
The upper
invited.
left-hand corner, if you click on events.
Yeah. So I know it's an imperfect system to post events. Connie actually told me about a site that people use if they're not on Facebook.
Meetup.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it costs some money, so I can't do it right away. But hopefully one of these days we can do that too. But yeah, so Monica, if you go on our page, top left should be, there should, like, it's different whether you're on your laptop or your phone. I also have a different view because I'm in charge of the page. But there should be like little dots or something in one of the corners. If you click it, it should bring you to events. And they're both posted in there. But if you still can't find them,
Yeah, so on your phone at the top left corner, there's the 3 dashes.
Well, I'm looking at actually my laptop.
Yeah, the laptop, it just has events in the left-hand column. If you're on the group page.
groups. I'm on this page.
so yeah, the first one's Memorial Day. Let me make sure I can
I don't
invite
s-
you.
Yeah, I haven't had anybody sign up for that, and I may change it if nobody does.
I see discussion featured members, media questions. Where's events?
I don't know. Does anyone have their laptop they can check? So again, like what I see is like totally different.
Yeah, I only have my phone in front of me.
Well, I just invited you, Monica, to the Memorial Day one. Let me find the other one and I can invite you. Did you see my invite at least? Oh, right here. Okay. I'm trying to think. Sometimes it's like on the top of the page. So like on the top of my page, it says like discussion featured members media. Sometimes there's events up there for some people.
Yeah, I don't see it there.
Is there anything that says like browse, or can you see any of like the chats?
Everything's kind of buried. Let's see. And on my phone, where is it on the phone?
Upper left.
The 3 dashes, if you click on that, you'll see events pop up.
Yeah. The hamburger.
That's right.
Okay. And when's your first packing trip?
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
27th,
Oh,
28th, 29th.
Okay.
I did
It's
just
all
find it.
trail. It's just rail trail. We're just riding out of Vernon up to
Okay, Memorial Day
Pine-
bikepacking with May 27 to 29.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Friday, I think is it Friday or Saturday? I don't know.
It says Saturday, May 27 to 29.
Yeah, so we're gonna
Okay, so I
ride
see
from
that.
Vernon up to Pomfret. I have a campground up there.
Yeah.
I'm spending 2 nights there. You don't have to spend 2 nights, but I was gonna do on Sunday, I was gonna run a gravel ride so anybody could come.
Mm-hmm.
Out of Putnam, and then Monday ride back.
Okay, I see it now.
So there's no craziness about it.
A
Yeah,
good intro.
It's a good intro, yes. So it's it's all gravel going up, but it's not what I did to the clan the first trip last year.
Character building.
No technical stuff.
That was an adventure. That gave them a true picture of what I do.
Yeah. Okay.
There's always got to be some adventure in it.
Yeah.
It
And
may
then-
not be fun in the moment, but after the
And
fact.
then
it
the
is.
second trip is the following weekend in Vermont.
Vermont.
And there's nothing technical about that either.
Oh, that's
It
what I'm doing.
involves,
That's what I'm doing my
road, rail
gravel
trail, and
race
some
that
gravel.
weekend.
gravel roads.
Cool.
Okay, all right, I see the events, so, okay, I'm good now, all right.
So do these have a lot of hills?
Well, not the Memorial Day one. The Vermont one is a little bit hilly, but I kept the mileage low. I think the first day is like 30 something miles and the second day is 25.
Uh-huh. Okay. And not single track in Vermont,
Nope.
not much.
Nope. Nope. It's a beautiful ride. The park that we're Ricker Pond that we're staying in is absolutely gorgeous. There's some hiking trails and stuff in there. You can go down to the lake.
I love Vermont.
Yeah, I do too.
It's the best.
Too
I
bad.
can only take up like there's only can be up to 8 of us, so at the campsite, so which will be pushing with tents, but
Get cozy. All right. Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for joining. Thank you so much, Tina.
thank you for having me.
Feel free to like send her messages and ask her questions because she's for sure the expert in our group on this stuff and knows a lot more than I do.
Anya does too. Anya does too.
Anya, yeah.
And actually, Anya's going and taking on some events this year. She's got one in 2 weeks.
Cool. What are you
Awesome.
doing? What is she doing?
She's doing the rock star in 2 weeks. The rock star.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself.
There we go. Where's the rock star?
In Virginia.
Yeah.
Cool. Is it any of the same trails as the Trans Virginia?
It is.
So you're
it does
helping.
Reddish Knob and Flagpole Knob. It's a tough ride. Yeah, it's shorter, but I mean, it's still a challenge.
Yeah. Well, Anya, you'll have to let us know how it
because
is.
it's so early in the season.
Yeah, I'm stacking those base miles. Like 200 miles a week.
You got 2 weeks on.
I know, but I did a few weeks with 200, so we'll see.
How many miles is the ride?
250.
250.
But I changed my job, so I didn't accrue any time, so I will have very limited time to finish it. It will be pushing.
There you go.
do it. You're tough.
There's like this group of guys. I forget like all the details now, but they have like a whole, I think, is it a YouTube? But it's like 60 hours. Like, what can you do from Friday night to Monday morning? And it's like they go on these crazy adventures within like the 60-hour weekend or whatever. That's what you're doing, Anya.
Have you watched any of the impossible routes from the vegan cyclists?
No.
Oh my God, they're so bad. They do such hard stuff. It's like, and they give themselves a time limit, and it's like, oh my God, that's such a sufferfest.
Yeah. Well, Anya, let us know how it is. People love this stuff, and I think it's so like fascinating because I think a lot of us have a hard time like even imagining like trying a multiple day event. So for sure let us know.
Will do.
Yeah, so direct your questions to Tina and Anya because they're the pros and the experts, and they have experience and clearly have like learned lessons throughout their rides, which is going to happen to all of us when we try something new.
Stay out of your head.
Yeah, talking to myself or arguing with myself, crying
times where I'm like,
sometimes.
why do they take us this way?
I think I've been with my brother when he's thrown his bike, and I was like, well, let's not also break the bike in the middle
Okay,
of
I
this
haven't gotten that
disaster.
far, but there is sometimes swearing and like, I've had it.
Yeah.
But then you continue and you're fine.
Yeah. Somehow you make it through the other side.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. We'll let you go enjoy the rest of your night. Tina, thank you. And thanks for leading all that you are this year. I think you've got a lot of great stuff
I hope
that's
to
just
see
getting started.
a lot of you out there, like, come and join. We had a
Yeah.
great group last night. Monday nights, especially. Monday nights are really easy pace, just social. You know, a lot of people have weekend endeavors they're doing, so it's just a nice spin out of the legs, and also for some other people to just start getting their base miles in. So
Yeah, so every Monday night, and then Wednesdays starting here in a couple of weeks.
yeah, on the 19th will be
The
the
19th.
gravel rides.
Yeah.
So the first 3 weeks are builder weeks on skills, and then we'll start venturing to different places around the state.
Cool. Yeah, so those are on Facebook, and Facebook is going to be your best resource. Like if there's inclement weather or something, or again, message us or get our phone numbers or something if you're like in a pinch, but always check Facebook. Like I try very, very hard to keep that up to date and people in the loop, especially if we know there's going to be bad weather that day, kind of keeping people in the loop as we get closer and closer.
Yeah, Monday nights will definitely cancel if it rains. Wednesdays will be depending on what we're getting and where we're going. I mean, gravel is about rain sometimes, so
Yeah.
and then on the weekends, pretty much every weekend I'm running a ride too. So, and those are a little bit longer, but please don't, be afraid to come out. It's okay to walk. It's okay for us to regroup at the top of climbs. I mean, it's all a learning curve. I really want to encourage everybody to, if they're interested in gravel, to come and try. The worst thing is you don't like it. But we're not going to leave you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys all get on at least one of her rides this year. There's like a zillion, so we really have no excuse.
Well, last night was a lot of fun, so had a good time.
We had a good group last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the weather's looking really good for next week too. I was just looking, things are looking.
I know, it finally feels like spring.
Yes, maybe we've made the change.
It was like culture shock. I mean, I spent 2 months in Florida, and then I come home from March and it was crappy. It's like,
Yeah. All right, everyone, have a great night and we'll see you around.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you so much.